Hey, it's Forest After Dark again with another entry in my series where I'm taking you through the behind the scenes of writing my next novel, the second book in a cyberpunk trilogy. First book, The Glass God, is already out. You can find it on Amazon, a link in the description below. And in this entry, I have some news. So I've been working on a scene for like probably the last week. A lot of, like cutting and rewriting. And eventually I had to have a conversation with my wife tonight because she's always been kind of an assistant for me in, giving me sort of pointers or suggestions or ideas when I'm going through going through my books and trying to figure out the best ways to, to handle the process. And after a conversation with my wife, we both agreed that this scene that I've been working on needs to be put to death. um, it is a scene that I've been struggling so much to get right, and no matter what route I took to try and get it right, it just wasn't working. It was not working no matter what I did to try and make it work. And sometimes that's just going to happen. I mentioned in a very recent entry, I think it was even the last one or the one before that, I'm losing track on these, but I mentioned in a very recent entry that if a scene doesn't serve a particular purpose, cut it, just cut it, omit it completely, just cut it, and you'll realize that it actually doesn't impact the book much when you do. Well, in the case of this scene, there was actually a purpose that I was, trying, a purpose that the scene was supposed to serve. However, it wasn't the right time for it. There's actually, the outcome of the scene is going to happen way later in the book now, without giving too much away. But by then, when that outcome does happen later on in the book, it's actually earned. It actually feels like payoff. It moves the plot forward or the characters forward in a way that's much more effective than doing it here. Because otherwise, when I was attempting to do it here, at this point in the story, it felt, it felt forced. It felt like trying to get a character to act out of character so that a part of the plot can happen. That is stupid writing, and it is the kind of writing that we see in a lot of media these days, in a lot of movies and TV shows. It's easy for writers to fall into the trap of making a character act out of character so that the plot can go in the direction that the writer wants it to go, even if it's not natural, even if it's not organic, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. Sometimes you can get really caught up in having this really, really cool idea, and it's so cool in your head, and then when you start putting it down on paper, you realize, oh wait, this idea is illogical when you look at everything else pertaining to the story in terms of the plot and the characters and even the world building and stuff like that. We can fall into the trap of what's called the rule of cool, where the desire to write something really, really cool trumps the desire to tell a story that makes sense within the world that it is set in. So yes, had to, put a scene, pretty much an entire scene, to death in my book. But the good news is that what happens in that scene will still happen way later in the book, but at a point when it makes a lot more sense for it to happen. That is the process of writing. Writing a book or writing a novel is such a, it is a gigantic task. It is a mountain climb. I wrote a 300 plus page novel, got it published, took me 3 years to do it. I'm hoping that this book will take me less. In fact, that's the goal. It will be less than 3 years. But the first book took 3 years, and I'm beginning to remember why. Because it is hard. Writing a book is hard. Telling a story is hard. It's worth it in the end. I love the feeling of like holding a book in your hand that you published, and being able to talk to people about it and introduce it to people. I've done a couple of book signing events and have even sold a few copies to strangers, not family, not friends, strangers. And it is a process that I think is well worth having. But it also requires a lot of patience, requires a lot of trial and error. You write so much only to cut so much. But in the end, it's worth it. And if you are someone who's writing a novel right now and you're just feeling that discouragement because you feel like the needle isn't really moving, you feel like, you know, progress isn't really being made, just keep at it. Really, if it's like just a little bit every day, just keep at it, just keep trying. You'll get there. You will get there. And so that's really all I've got for tonight, just to kind of share the fact that I had to cut a scene, and here was why. And I'm sure that if you're writing a novel too, you're gonna have to cut a scene or six. I'm sure this isn't the only scene that I'll end up writing and cutting for this novel or any novel in the future. I have at least 4, 5, 6 other book ideas, and they'll all eventually get written. But yeah, that's all I got for tonight. Be sure to like and subscribe. I will be doing this every night per usual. I will see you on the next night. Bye.